The following is the fourth and final episode of the Remembrances of Betty Taylor, my mother. This recording was made on April 4th, 2011 in Issaquah, Washington. It follows up on 3 previous episodes that are also posted on my YouTube channel. I'll post the links to these other episodes in the description below. In this episode, Betty recalls her life events from the summers of 1968 to 1969, with the graduations of Tom and Susan from the University of Oregon, up to her 90th birthday in 2011, celebrated in Kona, Hawaii. So Susan graduated, and then what'd she do?
Well, Susan graduated from college, and then she went to the Peace Corps.
Mm-hmm.
However, before that, that weekend that happened was also my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and it was a WNPA convention at Salishan.
The weekend of Susan's graduation?
All that happened at the same time. Well, I guess she graduated, but she left then that weekend. So I didn't get to my parents' 50th anniversary. But then she went to Yap and was gone for 2 years. And Tom then graduated the next year after she did. Then he went to Europe on the backpack route.
So they were both gone at the same time?
Yeah, and she was still gone when he went, I think. Or maybe she was just back. But he was gone. He was gone several months, but he had that experience of jumping out of a car in Yugoslavia, and I had that bad dream at the same time. Woke up with a start, and I'm sure it all happened at the same time.
Mm-hmm. A mother's intuition, huh?
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess it was several years before Andy went to Oregon. But Tom then graduated, and after he came back from that trip, he started working at Sandy, and they got him a little red Pinto car. Susan came back, and I guess I think she started work for us, but in the meantime she and Al decided to get married, and she went to California and lived down there until she got pregnant, and she decided she didn't want to raise a child in California. So she came back and took a job at the News Times until Al could sell the house, and he came up. And I don't know, things kind of get a jumble in there about what happened. I think Tom must have gotten married. Yeah, he was married the same year she was in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
You were only about 10, 12, 13, I think it was, 13 maybe. Because you were the picture taker at Susan's wedding.
Yeah, I was in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think 8th grade or 9th
Tom
grade.
and Darlene got married and lived in Sandy for a while. All this time we were working in Newport and building the paper. We didn't take any big trips or anything. We took lots of weekend trips, which were more fun, I always thought, than long trips. You could have more of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then that one winter, and Walt said, "Well, I think we can see the end of the college for now, so maybe you can plan a trip to Hawaii." And so we did. I immediately planned a trip to Hawaii, and we were gone 10 days. And Andy stayed with Bob in Virginia part of the time till he walked home by himself in a snowstorm. And I don't know, I can't remember too much more of the 60s and
Well, this is the 70s you're talking about now.
the 70s, yeah. Well, I guess the boat experience began. We got that 24-foot boat to begin with. And that seemed big, and Andy and Walt and I learned about that. And Andy and Walt and Tom Chamberlain had that experience. Got Andy clear out of school to go over the bar the first time. That was a big deal. He had that experience with something happened to the gas supply and all. Then, of course, we graduated to the 34-foot boat. And I think you were still that you were still around and experienced the 30.
Well, I'm still around.
Experienced the 34-foot too. When we never really, that was a gas engine boat. We never went very far in that boat. Till Walt said, well, it's time to get a bigger one, so we got a 42-foot. Andy had a great time on the selection process of all those boats. And in the meantime, Andy went to college, went to Oregon.
Well, I went to Japan in between there.
Well, yeah, he went to Japan first. And for a year, and that was a good experience.
Did you have, at any point when your children left to go overseas, at any point did you have any misgivings or anything?
None.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. I wished
Good
I'd
riddance. Good riddance, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, after that, after Andy left, we were empty nesters, I guess you might say, because Tom and Darlene had moved to Tillamook to run the paper there. Susan and Al had come back to Newport and had a baby. Sarah was born. And then Andy came back and went to Oregon. Turned out to be another journalism graduate. And then, of course, Andy and Junko got married, but that was after we moved to Port Ludlow. We sold the paper in 78, I think it was. But then Walt worked for them for a year after that, and then we were ready to move on. So Tom took over, but he didn't last all that long. He didn't want to work there anymore. After we got to Port Ludlow, we moved up, well, we worked up to Port Ludlow, or moved up to Port Ludlow, so we could boat up there. And we were enjoying boating. And Tom decided he'd like for us to see if we could buy another paper. So we did. We bought the Gig Harbor paper, which turned out to be a great investment for all of us. In the meantime, Andy's in Japan with Junko. Well, they got married over there. We didn't go to visit Japan at that time, but we went later after they were working. And what was happening to everybody else at that time?
Well, I don't know. That was the early '80s. So
I guess Susan and Al were still in Newport, and Al got into that boat building marina thing. And Walt was able to work less as times were better at the paper, and he was able to do more boating and
how much did he work at the Gateway? I mean, did he? Because you were living in Hawaii half the year, each year.
Well, yeah, when we sold the paper,
The paper meaning the News Times?
The News Times. we were up in Port Ludlow and bought a house in Port Ludlow the summer of 78, I think it was. But we bought the house in Port Ludlow. That fall we bought a house in Hawaii. And we had never spent a winter in Hawaii, in Port Ludlow. We went to Hawaii and bought a house there. So we were on a 7-month, 5-month schedule for over 20 years, back and forth. And then a month on the boat. We'd usually spend a month on the boat. Sounds like the best of all worlds, and I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I have no regrets about any of that time. That was the greatest part of our life, I guess. Because we had left the News Times when we were still under 60. We were in our late 50s. I was at the Gateway, and he'd go down there once a week and stir things up. Tom loved having him come down there once a week, but it was a great thing to have for him. So then we decided we needed to sell the Gateway because we just didn't want to get involved in building a new building and all that expense, and so we did sell the Gateway. Tom went to Bend for a period. I don't know. It seems like the closer things are, I can't think what happened in sequence. Mm-hmm. Tom ended up in San Diego.
But in between, you guys took some trips, like you went to Japan at least once or twice in there, and you went to Australia too, right?
Oh yes, that one year he consented to...
Mrs. Walt consented?
Walt consenting went to go to Australia. That was, and I arranged for a trip to charter a boat on the Great Barrier Reef, and that was what sealed the deal for him to have a boat charter. So we did. We went to Australia for a month, or almost a month, right at just between New Year's and Christmas, and it was a great trip. We rented a car, and we rented that boat, and visited some friends there in Brisbane. And yes, we went to Japan earlier than that to visit Auntie and Junko, and had a great time that trip. Of course, we went to Mom Bet's. We still had that connection. And
was Dad reluctant to travel overseas?
He didn't like to travel, period. He said that was why he bought a house in Hawaii, because he didn't want to travel all that much. So we've never been to Europe. Europe, where everybody, right after the war, when people began retiring, they were all going to Europe. But we never went there. By that time, we were thinking the other way because of the Japanese connection, and also, as it stands today, I've been to Japan 5 times. I think that sounds like a lot, for most people anyway. Because I've been a couple of times by myself, because he didn't want to go.
After the Gateway was sold, you still went to Hawaii for a little while after that until...
Oh yeah, we didn't sell the house till 2000. When Walt turned 80, we decided that it was time to give up 2 houses. We had already sold the boat because we were using it far less than we had in the beginning, and we got a good deal. We sold it to a guy from Canada. He took it away, and we never saw him again until we saw it in Victoria one year when we were going up on the ferry, and we looked out and Walt said, "There's the copy hook." And it turned out it had been bought by a second party, and they were using it as a whale watching boat. And for all I know, it's still there doing that. he offered to take us out on it, but we refused. We didn't want to do that. We did go aboard, and they had gutted it, and it wasn't the same boat that we had known. But we were on that same schedule until 2000, and we sold. He turned 80, and we sold the house. We didn't make a lot of money on that house either, but it had been such a fun house to have. A model home, and bought it furnished and everything. We had all those winters in that house, and we figured we came out even on it.
The house in Hawaii, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So then we had from 2005 or 2000 to 2005 before we both collapsed at the same time, and a couple should never do that. One should always live longer than the other to take care of the other one. But we did it at the same time. We had caught cold in the winter when the power had been out for several days, and Walt never really recovered. Besides, then my back gave out, and I had to have that operation, and so Andy found us a university house in Issaquah, and he came not happily, but
Kicking and screaming.
he never liked it here, and none of the women here feel their husbands would like it here. But he came and he was here because he knew this is where we should be, where I would be okay.
Did you guys, I mean, Juke and I, we looked at places and found this place, and Susan and Tom and I talked about it, and we convinced you, but between the two of you, you had conversations about moving over here?
Not much. He didn't want to talk about it. He said, "You picked it out. I guess that's what we're going to do." But we had put the house on the market,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were going to have to do something. And we had looked down at
Lacey.
down at Lacey there, and even made a deal on the house. And then they had given us some wrong numbers and changed the price. Well, we backed out of it, fortunately, because I've not heard good reports from that in the past, or recently, when I've talked about it. So that worked out well, and so then when Andy found this place, we moved over here. I came I never went back to Port Ludlow after I left the hospital in June of 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved in here first part of July of 2006, so I've been here for 5 years now. And if I have to live in a place like this is as good as I can do, I'm sure. So that's the way things stand at this point.
Well, you're 90 years old now. How old was your mother when she passed away?
She was about 92,
Uh-huh.
and so was Walt's mother,
Mm-hmm.
and so was my father.
Hmm.
So I was doing all right till a month ago.
Well, we should point out what the date is today. Today is
Yeah.
April 30th, 2011. And this second half of this interview is taking place 2 years after the first half.
Right.
And so...
So I'm 2 years older.
You're 2 years older than you were.
Celebrated my 90th birthday in Hawaii at a beach picnic, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Spent February in Hawaii. I've done that for 4 years now.
Yeah, every year for the last 4 years you've gone and spent a month in Hawaii by yourself with your walker. And Susan has helped take care of you over there. And every year you go down to you've been going down to San Diego and staying with Tom too.
For 3 years, yeah.
So all of your children are still connected with you?
Oh, yes. All my family is done very well and are all married to the same people. And we've not had any divorces yet in the family, and hopefully we won't have. And now they're just about all out of school, We got one more, Marina, to finish school, if she can get started.
So you've got 4 of your grandchildren are married now?
The 4 oldest ones are married, and the next 3 won't be married, I don't think, for a while, so we have a breather here now. So, but I've been living here. I have a 2-bedroom apartment, and I got a new computer last summer, which I enjoy, and I've been active here in the community, as they call this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been here 5 years, so I just have to get myself up and walking again.
If you look back on your life, what is the single thing that perhaps had the biggest impact on your life?
Getting married.
Yeah.
Getting out of Gary, Indiana, which I always said wanted to marry a man that would take me far away from Gary, Indiana. And I remember when I was, before I got, I guess it was after I was married. It was between the time that I was married, still living there, and I could go and join him in Oregon. And some other gals and I went into Chicago for lunch, and we went to a fortune teller in this restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that I was going on a trip, and that in the future I would own lots of property, and I'd also, I don't know if she said live in Hawaii, but I'd own lots of property in the West. So,
do you have any regrets on your life here so far? Things you wish you had done that you didn't get a chance to do?
well, of course, when I graduated from high school, I couldn't go the first 2 years, and it was the 3rd year that I finally managed to go
To college.
to college,
Mm-hmm.
and went to Purdue for that 1 year, because it was only 1 year because December 7th, 1942 came, and
41.
41, and just changed the life of all of us with the war.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I guess I've already explained about getting married,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I don't need to go through that again.
Mm-hmm.
No, I really don't have too many regrets. I think there are probably lots of little things I would have done different, but I think everything turned out very well. So I hope I have several more years here to enjoy people and things, since we just went to the last grandchild's wedding in Bend this month. I'm not going to be traveling for a couple of months here at least.
Betty lived for 5 more years after this recording was made, and she was able to celebrate the college graduation of her youngest grandchild, Marina, in 2015. Betty passed away on November 10th, 2016. On June 10th, 2017, Betty's ashes were committed to the sea in Puget Sound near Port Ludlow, Washington, and near Betty and Walt's old home, and where Walt's ashes had been committed to the sea 9 years before. Betty, you are missed.